I'm Gwen Neff, and I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon activities on behalf of the High Plains Chautauqua Committee and the Colorado Humanities. I was thinking that by now we should put the sponsors' names into a little ditty and we could all sing them like with the fellow from Nebraska, you know, how he had the singing the other night, and then we'd all know them, which is better. But all kidding aside, these people are so important. The High Plains Chataqua is made possible by the Colorado Humanities, National Endowment for the Humanities, Ames Community College, Greeley Evans School 6, District 6, the City of Greeley Museums, and the University of Northern Colorado Department of History. Additional sponsors are in your programs and you can see them. Please turn off your cell phones. I am really excited to introduce you to this first program this afternoon. Our scholars are John Bell and Fred Applewhite. John is a retired Master's of Education, retired public school administrator who also serves as an educational consultant specializing in the history of the Buffalo Soldiers. An accomplished horseman, he has trained numerous local, state, and national champion horses and riders. Fred Applewhite, Master of Arts, is a career educator with a passion for learning. He has been a teacher and administrator in public schools for 38 years. He is also an avid horseman. Are the horses outside? And I would like to also introduce Jeanette Applewhite. Would you please stand up? Belle, I'm sorry, John, Mrs. John. And she told me they are not going to talk about her, but I think they should. So you be sure and talk to her afterwards because she has a lot of things to tell us. It's very interesting. So, thank you.
Can you hear me? My name is John Bell. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Buffalo Soldiers of the American West. We are a nonprofit educational group, and we tell the story of the Buffalo Soldiers. I'm here today with Fred Applewhite, and I'll do some present at the beginning of the talk, and then he's going to take it over and he's going to talk about the table, and something special he may give you a little bit later on. I'm not going to tell you what that is right now. Let's start talking about the men who became Buffalo Soldiers. The Buffalo Soldiers story actually begins during the Civil War. The men who were Buffalo Soldiers were former slaves, and they worked on the plantations from kin to kin, from sunrise until sunset. And they were not paid for their services. The only thing that they knew around them was what they were told. They were not allowed to leave the plantation, and if they did, they were severely punished or killed. So the only thing they knew about the world was what the overseers told. When the Civil War broke out and the slaves were freed, these men got a chance to join the army. A lot of the men, 180,000 of those men, for sure, joined the Union Army. And I'll say that again. 180,000 black men joined the Union Army. And 33,000 of those men lost their lives fighting for the Union during the Civil War. There were other black freedmen who fought for the Confederacy. A lot of people don't know that. Tennessee was the first state in the South who authorized the recruitment of black soldiers. That was in 1861. In 1864, Louisiana and Alabama recruited black soldiers. To a certain degree, I got to change that a little bit. Louisiana recruited black soldiers. Alabama recruited soldiers of color if they were Creole, which means they were part French, part black, part French and part Spanish, part French and part Indian, or a combination of those three. Alabama recruited those men for their troops. When the men joined the Army, they got a chance to get 3 square meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they got paid for their services. They were paid $10 a month. But they had to give back 3 for a uniform allowance. The white soldiers were paid $13 a month, and they didn't have to pay a uniform allowance. In 1864, the Union decided that they would pay their soldiers $13 a month, just like the white soldiers. But there was a reason for that. The South was now recruiting, and they were going to pay soldiers the same as white soldiers, $13 a month. Now, if I'm fighting on this side, and I'm going to get killed, and I'm getting $7, why don't I fight over there and get 13, and I still may get killed, but at least I got more money in my pocket. So that's one of the reasons why the Union increased the black soldiers' salary to $13 a month. But the men who were in the Army got in the Army and they found that they really enjoyed being there. A new uniform. And if they were cavalry, they got a horse. And they rode everywhere. But they had cavalry and infantry during the Civil War. And when the Civil War was over, the men who had been in these black units, both infantry and cavalry, they got a chance to join the regular army because during the Civil War they were volunteers. Got same pay, but they became regular soldiers. Created the 9th and the 10th after the Civil War. They served west of the Mississippi River, could not serve east. And we'll tell you why in a little bit, all right? I don't want to take all of Fred's thunder here. They came west, and they were started in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. That's where the 9th, 10th was started. And the 9th was started in Louisiana. But they were all sent west to take care of the moving population. Because after the Civil War, a lot of people moved west. And they did not have enough soldiers to protect those new settlers moving west. Because during the Civil War, they had over 1 million men. But when the war was over, they reduced them in size to about 30,000. And then they found out they didn't have enough army to protect anybody as they moved west. So they created some new units. Cavalry and the infantry. And when they came west, they were sent to places that even I wouldn't want to go to, or you wouldn't want to go to there either. I've been to a lot of these forts where they were stationed. And you drive your car, and the first thing you say is, I hope I don't run out of gas here. You look around, there's 100 miles of nothing. But that's where they were sent. Have you ever been to Fort Huachuca? Well, it's a lot different now than it was years ago, but it's out there. They came west, and the 10th took care of the Kansas area for a while. The 9th was sent to Texas. And their job was to protect everyone down. In 1877, while they were down there in Texas, Company A, 10th Cavalry, was sent out to bring back some lost horses who kind of had some help getting away. And so they were to bring back these lost horses. And they went out on the Staked Plains. That's the area between Texas and New Mexico, where the early missionaries staked out the water holes. So they went out on the Staked Plains with their guide. And their guide got them lost. And they were lost on the Staked Plains for 86 hours without water. The temperatures of 120 degrees in July. The first day of the campaign, the soldier fell off his horse. Another soldier went over, picked him up, put him back on his horse, and they pushed on. The second day, a horse collapsed, fell to his knees. The soldier grabbed his knife, went over, grabbed the horse by the bridle, and he cut the horse's throat. And he drank the blood. That made him sick, but he was trying to survive. They pushed on. The third day, a horse just stopped. And he started to spread his legs. And the horse started to urinate. The soldier grabbed his cup, went over to the horse, filled it up, had a drink. I'm not trying to make you sick, but what I'm trying to tell you is that a human being will do anything necessary to survive, and that soldier survived. That's the true story. Happened to Company A, 10th Cavalry, on the Staked Plains in 1877, commanded by Captain Nicholas. These soldiers were out there in the West, and they were out there in Arizona, and they were out there in Texas, and they were out there in New Mexico. As a matter of fact, when the Buffalo Soldiers came west, they were sent to places like Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and a place they call Colorado. Between 1866 and 1898, there were 8,000 Buffalo Soldiers out here in the West. And what did they do? They did anything that the United States government asked them to do. They took care of the so-called Indian problem. They took care of rustlers. They were the martial law out here. If you had a town without a sheriff, you called the army. That was their job, to protect the settlers. So when they were down there in New Mexico and Arizona, they were down there for 21 years. And every year, they asked for a transfer. And every year, their transfer was denied. Finally, after almost 21 years down there, they got a transfer. They got transferred from there to Montana. And the night they got there, it was 30 below zero. Now, the men that were in the service, they really enjoyed it. And they stayed there for many, many years. And there's one soldier who stayed there a long time. And I'm going to tell you his story right now. I've been asked to talk to you folks today and give you a few words. My name is Sergeant George Georgia. I was born in Williamson, Kentucky, in 1847. And I enlisted in the United States Army when I was 19 years old. They say as a soldier that I have a sure finger and a keen eye when I handle a rifle. I enlisted 6 times in the United States Army. Best job I could find. But something happened in 1880 that I'm awfully proud of. I was put in charge of 25 men, and our job was to build a defense or defenses around Old Fort Tularosa in New Mexico, to defend that particular town against Chief Victorio and over 100 Apache warriors. When the battle started, my 25 men did the very best they could do. And they repelled every attack, the first one, then the second one, and then the third one. And finally, the battle was over. We were victorious. For that incident, the United States government recognized me for doing a good job there. And they gave me this new medal. They call this new medal the Medal of Honor. And men, and especially you new men, I'm talking to you here today at Fort Robinson because I've been in the Army for 30 years. And today is March 30th, 1897. And this is my retirement day. I'd like to thank all of you here at Fort Robinson for coming out today to see me talk. I don't talk very much, but to see me talk. And I would like to say to you young soldiers, and especially you new men, one thing you've got to remember. Remember the motto. We can, we will, and ready and forward. So long, and I'll be seeing you around.
Well, Sergeant Bell. Ladies and gentlemen, you must pay attention because there will be a test at the end of this presentation. My name is First Sergeant Fred Applewhite. I'm the proud First Sergeant of the Buffalo Soldiers of the American West. As Sergeant Bell says, we are an educational reenactment organization. Our mission is to continue to tell the story of these proud men who, for whatever reason, have been left. As Sergeant Bell said, the Buffalo Soldier story began with slavery. At the end of the Civil War, Congress created 6 all-black regiments, 95% right, I must say, commanded by white officers. They were the 9th and 10th Cavalry. And what cavalry do? They ride horses, which is what we do. The 38th, 39th, and 40th and 41st Infantry. And what does infantry do? Walk wherever they go. Keep that in mind, because it's going to come back to you. Remember that. These men have to serve west of the Mississippi River. Why did they have to serve west of the Mississippi River? Because the Civil War just ended, and nobody in the South wanted to see anyone with a blue coat, and especially if it had a black face. So west of the Mississippi they served. And John already alluded to the states that they served in. I'm going to talk a little bit about the uniform. Cavalry uniform. I am dressed in the uniform of the cavalrymen of the 1860s and 1870s. My hat is black, not white. That white hat was created by John Ford for John Wayne, and not the United States Army. My tunic is dark blue. My pants are sky blue. They are sky blue because the United States Army said they're sky blue. And if the Army said they're sky blue, they're sky blue. I wear high boots, which says I ride wherever I go. I have spurs on my boots, which I use to cue my mount. Left, right, forward, backwards. My kerchief is yellow. It could be red, it could be green, it could be blue, but that yellow kerchief, which I am wearing, was created only by John Ford. For John Wayne, is you wore yellow ribbon. Not the United States Army. The soldiers bought this wherever they could find it. And whatever material that they had at the store, that's what they bought. It's not on the issue. I have gauntlets on my hands, because at that time they used black powder pistols. And when you fire the pistol, the powder would come and burn your hand. Sometimes the gun would catch on fire, depending on how you loaded it, to protect my hands. My belt is designed to have the powder in the back, the bullets in the front. I have a holster that would have a 45 caliber black powder pistol. I didn't bring it in because I'd probably get arrested. And the most important weapon of all is the Buffalo Soldier toothpick. We use this to clean our teeth. Let's talk a little bit about what we have on the table before I get any further. Keep in mind now, you remember what I said, right? The test is coming. The test is coming. If you fail, you'll be the only people to fail this year. We've given this presentation right now, Sunday Bell, about 35, 40 times. Nobody's failed. So at our next presentation, if you fail, I'm going to say, don't be like those people in Greeley. When the soldiers were out on campaign, meaning when they were out chasing the bad guys, they were all given certain kinds of food. As Sergeant Bell said, in the daytime it could get as hot as 130. At night, on the desert, it could get as cold as 25. So you have to have something that's stable, something that you can count on, something that wouldn't spoil. So when the soldiers were out, they issued them beans, coffee, and hardtack. They had hardtack, coffee, and beans in the morning. They had beans, coffee, and hardtack at night. They had coffee, hardtack, and beans for dinner. Never spoiled. This hardtack is over 10 years old. It's still good to eat. And when they did have their coffee, they had what's known as brown sugar. That's where the toothpick comes in at. They have your coffee, shave a little bit of it in there, stir it up, and that's sweet. Didn't have milk. No such thing as powdered milk back then. When they were camping out, what you only see in the movies when the night shows up, all the soldiers get off and they tie their horse to this rope and they all go walk off, right? That's what you see in the movies. You do that for 2 days, your horse is dead. The horse has to eat. What they usually did was assign 2 soldiers to watch the horses. And they would put some sort of hobble on the animal. This would go in their front feet. And the horse could walk around all night. He wouldn't go too far. And the next morning you could catch him. Because if you woke up and your horse was gone, what are you going to be doing? Walking. You don't want to walk. When you saddle your horse up, this is called a headstall. It's a complete headstall. This goes over the horse's head. This goes in the horse's mouth. This goes underneath the horse's chin. These are your brakes. This is your steering wheel, along with your reins. So if you want your horse to go forward, you loosen on the reins. And my horse, I got him so trained I just squeezed. And he said, "Oh, Papa, want me to go." When you want to stop him, you pull back, gently. You want him to back up. 1, 2, then he gets the message and go back up. You want him to go left, turn your hand gently this way, touch him with your right spur. And you'll go left, you want him to go right, and turn your hand this way, touch him with your left spur. That's the way that we train. So, you know, we don't abuse them because they're so important to us. Because without our horses, we are infantry. You know, we do not want to walk. I know, you know, everyone, we all buy shoes, right? Horses have to have shoes on too. It's just like they're supposed to like your fingernail. You trim them, and if you bang your fingernail enough on something hard, eventually it cracks, doesn't it? Horses have to have shoes. These are the size of the shoes that we use on our horses. This is the front shoe. This is the rear shoe. Can you see the difference? This one is wide because that's where the greatest part of the weight of the horse is. His head, his chest is heavier than his rear. We call these standard cars for that period of time. Here are the semis. Same thing. Round in the front because that's where the weight is. A little different shape in the back, very similar to the standard size car. These are the horses that carries the wagons. They take the payload, the food. When you're out on campaign, you're issued your canteen. It's up to you to take care of it. You don't run out of water. This is what they use. And if you ran out of water, that was on you till you got to the next water hole. Generally, they took care of that one swig at a time, just to keep their mouth wet, especially in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. This is the rifle holster which goes on the side. You notice that it's short. Well, they had short rifles they call carbines. It was easy to pull out because it was short in battle and for you to fight. By the way, when they got into battles, they didn't shoot off the horse. They got off the horse to shoot. And they were usually marching forward. Generally, you see them on TV and tubes, right? Forwards most of the time. Because one person in their group was assigned to take 3 horses, and the other 3 soldiers dismounted and fought on foot. They only fought on horseback, 1, if they were outnumbered and had to run, and 2, if they were chasing the bad guys. If it was a steady comeback back and forth, they dismounted, moved the horses to the rear to protect the horses. Because if your horse got shot, you won't be riding. You will be walking. So they protected the horses and they fought on foot. Buffalo Soldier suitcase. Everything he ever had in his life was on this. His food, his extra bullets, his t-shirt, his extra socks, 1 extra shirt, food for his horse, everything that he needed, he carried in his saddlebag. And of course, communication between 2 forts. This is the mail carrying pouch. They put all the mail in here and went from 1 fort to the next fort, handed that mail off, sent up to more mail, take it to the next fort. He carried on his side, just like this. A lot of times he was chased, but his mission, just like the mail is today, deliver the mail. They did their best to do it. Not always they were successful. Sometimes they never made it to the next fort. But the effort was always there. When they did get back to the fort, and they had an opportunity to take a bath and get clean clothes, I'm going to show you some modern technology. This is a steam iron. The water goes in here. This comes loose. You put red hot ambers inside, put the top back on it. Once it heats up enough, it goes up through here. The water comes down, steams come out the side, and you got your steam iron. I wish I had created that. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Buffalo Soldiers. When they created the Buffalo Soldiers, as I said earlier, they were commanded by white officers. Any white officer that would command a black regiment automatically got an upgrade in pay. There was this one officer, whom name I will mention later, got an opportunity to command the 9th Cavalry. And he was a light bird, lieutenant colonel, and they were going to make him a full colonel if he chose the 9th Cavalry. He chose not to. Also chose the 7th Cavalry instead. And we all know what happened to the 7th Cavalry. That officer's name is George Armstrong Custer. And to this day, the 9th Cavalry is so glad he chose the 7th and not the 9th. I want to talk to you a little bit about a very special soldier. This soldier, John, the 38th Infantry, which later turned into the 24th, in Missouri. He marched from Missouri to New Mexico with his company. Not a great soldier, but a soldier who did his job as best as he possibly could. Always on time. Uniform always correct. And one day this soldier got ill. And he had to go in the infirmary to see the doctor. Once he was in there and he was examined by the doctor, they discovered that this soldier who joined the service by the name of William Cathy was not William Cathy at all. His name was Cathy Williams, the only known female to be a member of the Buffalo Soldiers. How did these men get their name? They didn't wake up one morning and say, "Hey, we Buffalo Soldiers." No. There are 3 theories as to how the name Buffalo Soldier came about. One is when the Native Americans first saw these new soldiers out west, they noticed that the hair on their head resembled the hair between the horns of the buffalo. If I had hair, you could see it. But they did. Thus, they named it Buffalo Soldier. The second theory is when they were in Montana, as Sergeant Bell mentioned earlier, and it was cold, and the snow was 3 inches deep, 3 feet deep, and they're moving across the snow, and they had these buffalo robes on to keep warm. From a distance, the Native American, to them, they said, "Buffalo." But as they got closer, they realized they weren't buffalo at all. They were this new soldier. Thus, Buffalo Soldier. And the third one, which I like to tell, is that when these Native Americans got him come back with these new soldiers, that these soldiers fought so hard and so fierce to stay alive, that they remind them of their sacred animal, the buffalo. So they named it Buffalo Soldier. Has anyone here know the name Meeker? You ever heard of the Battle of Milk Creek here in Colorado? Well, good, I can tell you the story. I like that. The Ute Indians up on the Colorado-Utah border they were stationed at what they called the White River Reservation. The Indian agent there was named Meeker. They named the town Meeker. We have a museum here in Greeley named after him. What Meeker did was he tried to educate the Indians and make farmers out of them. They didn't like that. So he got in a fight with Chief O'Reilly's brother-in-law, and he beat him up pretty good. So Meeker understood that there was some issues coming. He's a little bit afraid. So he sent for help, anticipating he might have more problems. The first one to respond was the soldier at Fort Frederick Steele, Wyoming, commanded by Major T. Thomas Thornburg. He came down from Fort Steele with 3 companies of 4th Cavalry and 1 infantry unit and a 21 train wagon to relieve the people at White River. Before he got there, he was ambushed from above by the Utes. During the first part of the battle, Thornburg was killed. But he managed to get his men, his second in command, managed to get the men settled down under cover behind the wagons and the dead horses. His name was J. Scott Payne, Captain J. Scott Payne. Payne got recognized immediately. They were indifferent. So Payne sent out his #1 scout. His name was J.P. Rankin. J.P. snuck out that first night. On his hands and knees through enemy territory in an effort to get out, to get back. At the same time, Captain Francis Dodge, 9th Cavalry, D Company, heard about the situation. Mounted his troops, all 35 of them, and headed toward the rescue. The morning of the second day, the soldiers woke up and they could see coming in from the sun this troop of soldiers charging at them. Caught the Native Americans by surprise. They stopped firing. Captain Dodge and his troops rode all the way in and dismounted. They started to put their horses away before the Native Americans realized, oh, we got to shoot them too. So they started shooting them. Started killing their horses as well. Now imagine this. 3 days. You laying there in the sun and your animals are dead all around you. What do you think is happening? The stench is starting to come. The flies are starting to come. And you would pin them. But they were happy to see the soldiers because when they came in, they gave additional ammunition and additional opportunity to fight. Now, Captain Dodge was thinking, I will charge them because of the cavalry, that's what you do. But they were all up above on steep hill, and charging would not have worked. So he had to stay there with the rest of them. That night, first night, a gentleman by the name of Sergeant Henry Johnson got a little thirsty. The wounded men were thirsty. So Sergeant Johnson got up all on his belly, all the way down to the river, and then fought his way back to bring water to the sick and injured and his men. The next night, Sergeant Johnson would crawl around all to his men, trying to encourage them to stay there. Don't give up the fight. He was known to tell the captain that, boss, I'm powerful thirsty. Somebody got to go get water for me, so I went and got water for somebody. On the 5th day of the siege, Colonel Merritt came in with 5 companies of cavalry, the 5th Cavalry. 5 companies of the 5th Cavalry, and the Indians decided to retreat and leave them alone. They rescued those soldiers from that embattled spot. But because of Sergeant Johnson's effort during the battle, he also received the Medal of Honor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
there any questions for us about the Buffalo Soldiers? Let's see. All right, I'll start over here. Yes.
Were the forts in the West integrated such that there were both black and white soldiers in one?
They were. They had infantry and cavalry at the same post.
I mean, black and white.
They had black and white there. Black cavalry, white infantry. Or black infantry and white cavalry. But usually, the fort was under command of an infantry officer.
Do you know anything about Fort Davis?
A little bit about Fort Davis.
Was it that way, Buffalo soldiers?
It was that way at Fort Davis. They were there. Yes. Do they have any campfires? Well, I'm not sure if they had a lot, but every fort has a hog ranch near it. Do you know what a hog ranch is in military terms? House prostitution. On a military post, they would build a post, they would stick up a stake, and then go 3 miles this way, 3 miles that way, 3 miles this way, 3 miles that way. That was the military. That was the post. Now, they couldn't have any hog ranches on the post. But 3 miles and 1 foot out that way. Were they camp followers? Kind of, I suppose. But they were kind of permanent because they didn't move, the soldiers moved from post to post. Any other questions? Right here.
Did they really make you wear wool in the summer?
Yes, ma'am. This was their summer uniform, their fall uniform, their spring uniform, and their winter uniform. Yes, they did.
And were the soldiers married?
You can only be married if you're a sergeant or not.
Yeah, I
With
could be
permission
married. Yeah, I could be
of
married.
the commanding officer.
With permission.
Yes.
So where have you gathered all this memorabilia and your clothing? How has this all come together? Where'd you get it? And have you been able to talk with any descendants of Buffalo soldiers?
We get our, first of all, we get our displays from all over. We collect some, people give us things to display, and we travel all around the country. We get a piece here, a piece there, a piece there. We have 350, 360 items that we display. We don't, and sometimes you see a lot of the same thing if you've seen us before, because we have a lot of original items that we don't bring with us. And any of us have your elders? I do. My father was a Buffalo soldier. My grandfather was a Buffalo soldier. My cousin was a Buffalo soldier. And my uncle was a Buffalo soldier. My grandfather was in 1890. His name was Aston Taylor, and he was ranked number 3 in small arms in the United States Army. And my father was in one of the last Buffalo soldier units in 1944. They went from 1866 clear through 1944. They were never enacted until 1944. And he was in the last unit. The Buffalo soldiers, the 9th and the 10th Cavalry, was the last mounted horse unit in the United States Army. I'm going back first. Yes.
2 questions. Were there retirement benefits?
They did get retirement benefits. They got pensions, depending on your rank. But there were not very many benefits. They couldn't go to the hospital in some cases if they had gone to a hospital near. If they retired, they had to go to the nearest soldier home, which may be 2 states over. Next question. Right.
What's the leather strap on
The one that kept coming loose.
No, the one that's dropping.
Oh, this is for the saber. When you in at the fort You could wear a saber. They stopped wearing them because they're so noisy. You know that you could sneak on anybody with it. But the top part is for the top of the saber, and the long one is for the bottom, and it kind of hangs like this on the side. So you see that in movies where the guy is long, it kind of just hangs there. It's just part of the uniform. When you didn't have the saber, you hooked it up this way and you walked it. Good question. And that's my teacher's coming back.
If you were married, where was your wife and family?
If you were married, sometimes they would stay on the post, and sometimes they live off the post. A guy like me with this rank would have his own house on the post, and his family would live there. My rank is the rank of Regimental Quartermaster Sergeant. There is only one guy like me in 1,000 men. So I'm the guy that has a lot of privileges. There's a Regimental Quartermaster Sergeant, and there's a Sergeant Major, and they are line ranks. They get equal pay. But the Sergeant Major better like me an awful lot, because he's going to look awfully dirty and shabby if he didn't like me, because I control everything that he gets.
My rank gives me the command of a company, anywhere between 35 and 45 men would be my responsibility under the officer in charge, or the two officers in charge, depending on how many officers they had in the unit.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you may, if she's willing to, Mrs. Bell.
My name is Jeanette Bell, and this is my husband. Oh, a little louder. Okay. My name is Jeanette Bell, and I am the regimental quartermaster sergeant. So he has privileges. I have privileges. So I'm able to live on the post, and I'm dressed not completely like his. He needs to get me some stripes. But the wives would then dress like their husbands, sort of, to show off their rank and sort of brag. So I have, just a little medallion. It's not particularly significant, but it's has an American eagle on it. And then I have a little bit of beadwork on my shoulders, because many of the men had Indian wives. And so I actually am part Indian, and it shows off some of my beadwork and my ancestry. I wear the dark tunic, and then I have a sky blue skirt on. And sometimes the wives would be laundresses, especially if they were black wives, or maybe black officers. And that was kind of important, because well, at least I got $1 for every soldier's clothes I washed during the month. So that was really an addition to our
$13 a month.
Yes.
Oh, he says he gets $21 a month.
I didn't see the rest. But essentially, that's why I'm dressed the way I am.
Thank you, Mrs. Bell.
Was life very hard for women on the fort, on the post?
Well, not so much for me, not so much for me, because he was in charge of all the goods, so probably we got a little extra here and there. But ordinarily, the women didn't live on the post anyway, and if they did, they were laundresses, and maybe they had their own little place that they stayed, but the work was very arduous, to say the least. Making the soap and having the lye soap and scrubbing and drying the clothes. So it wasn't a life that most women wanted to live.
Yes, ma'am.
Was it true that being called a squaw was really derogatory to you?
Well, yes, it was. And even today, it,
Because I heard the term, I didn't realize that. What's the term you're talking about?
Squaw.
squaw is a very derogatory term. Then and especially now. Yes. Okay.
When did you finally have black
First officer that graduated was in 1877.
And it's good.
The first black officer that graduated from West Point was in 1877.
His name was Flipper. He was there for 4 years. No one spoke to him but his teachers. 4 years.
His name was Henry O. Clifford.
And got a picture of him here.
And he joined the 10th Cavalry when he got out. Question of that.
Did the soldiers ever eventually get to serve east of the Mississippi or overseas?
They did. They served east of the Mississippi River after the Spanish-American War. When they came west to fight in the Spanish-American War, when they came back, they were sent east and they were sent to Vermont first. First groups went to Vermont, and then eventually all over the east. But when they came west to go up to go into Cuba, they were sent to Georgia where they were picked up. So they weren't as out as well.
Are you ready for the test? You've been taking good notes.
They've been stalling, Sergeant.
You're going to have 7 questions. 6 will count, and if you miss one, 7 is a bonus. That makes sense?
Yep.
We start with easy and go to hard. First question. It's a geography question. What major river did these men have to serve west of? Mississippi. Yes, I was a good teacher for the first part, huh? Second question. Can you name one of the cavalry units? 9. Very good. It's obvious I have 10 on that. You couldn't miss that one. That's a given. Third. What was the name of the lone female? Kathy Williams. Hey, Coach. They're getting better, huh? They don't even have to think about it. Fourth question. What was the name of the white officer who chose the 7th Cavalry over the 9th? And how smart was it? No, that's not a question. Fifth question. Can anyone give me one example of one theory of how the Buffalo Soldiers got their name? Any one of the 3? The hair between the head, the horns of the buffalo resemble the hair on the head of these new soldiers. Question 6. They get a little bit tough this time. A little bit tough. Question number 6. Did anyone tell me what was the name of the sergeant who received the Medal of Honor during the Battle of Mill Creek? Henry Johnson. You get it. Now, the toughest question of them all, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I won't feel bad if you won't get this, because most people don't get this last question. So I will give you time to think back about all the things that he talked about. What is the most difficult question that he could ask? You ready for it? What's my name? Ah, they got it! Very good! You missed the first part, though. First Sergeant Fred Applewhite, but I'm all right with that. Hey, I want to thank you so much for giving us.
Is there anyone here who's related to George Armstrong? I did a presentation of my own, and I had a lady in the audience. so I want to find out now so I can head for the door.
Thank you so much. And next time, bring your horses.
Well, we will. We'll bring them, but they may slide on this floor.
Well, yeah.
May I say one thing? And I always ask this, and then we'll get out of here. I'm having such a good time. But I want to know, did you know more about the Buffalo Soldiers at the end of our presentation today? Again, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Be sure and fill out